Hello and welcome to our discussion of the new European Union regulations starting in June of 2023 that require careful documentation of sustainable sourcing for ebony and other wood species. My name is Ceile Kronick and I'm joined by the owner of Vermont Violins and V. Instruments, Kathy Reilly. And we are going to discuss some of these changes to our industry, where they might have come from, some background, and hopefully give you some insight into what you can do to prepare for the future. Your connection with the industry goes way back, from a master's in botany to working as a field naturalist, the Nature Conservancy, to playing violin and viola all across the state of Vermont, and to eventually opening Vermont Violins. What are you doing today in conjunction with endangered species?
So today I recently joined, or was asked to join, the board of the Alliance, and right now I'm working with a bunch of really amazing luthiers to incorporate environmental issues into the curriculum of the Lutherie schools. And as part of our work at Vermont Violins and the V. program, we've been working really hard to incorporate sustainable sources of local woods, in particular maple, into the making of our instruments, and then even going as far as using it to make our varnish.
So let's dive right into ebony. I think it's important for people to understand why we use ebony on our instruments and the physical characteristics that make it the go-to choice for violin, viola, cello, bass fingerboards for hundreds of years at this point.
Yeah. So we typically use maple for our necks and scrolls on our instruments to match the backs and the ribs. Maple is a great hardwood as a temperate hardwood, but it's not ideal structurally for the bending strength and stiffness that we need to keep that neck straight. So we're using ebony largely as a structural feature because of its density, the hardness, so the way we put our fingers down in the same place over and over again, and largely to support that neck, so for its bending strength and for its stiffness.
So one thing I noticed you didn't really touch on there is its color and how that has become such a core part of what people associate with a violin viola. How does the color's effect on the perceived quality play into ebony's history?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, like, the black color has become kind of the priority right now, but it has no link to the structural and physical properties that the fingerboard serves. So I suspect, ebony was used to make high-end cabinetry and furniture going way back, and it was probably that color was linked, probably subconsciously for us with luxury items and high-end quality.
So that all makes a ton of sense. Assuming every piece of ebony shares the same characteristics,
Right. Yeah.
Do they, or is there a level of inconsistency between different types of ebony?
Oh yeah, I mean, look, wood is wood.
Yep.
It is a natural product. We know it is inherently inconsistent. It is many different species growing in a really broad region ranging from like Madagascar, Southern Africa, going up through Central, East Africa, skipping over to India, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, Philippines, down to Australia. And then you've got the other species that are over in South and Central America. They are not the same.
So that seems like an issue. Where do those inconsistencies stem from?
I mean, it's just a lot of different species growing in a lot of different climates. Why would it be the same? And then you look at, like, Bob Taylor made a comment at one point. He's like, we have got to come to grips with the fact that we're going to have a wide variety of aesthetic characteristics with this wood. I mean, historically, we cut down 10 ebony trees to get one with this dense black hardwood in them. And, the rest of that wood is just scrap.
Yeah, so that, those are pretty fundamental features of it being a natural wood.
Right.
That
Exactly.
It's nature's creation.
Right.
How come these issues really haven't been prevalently talked about until the past 20, 30 years with the different grading of ebony? Why now is it coming to a head?
I mean, I think it has to do with technological advancement. I mean, fundamentally, for individual makers, it took time, and the way we logged was not as sophisticated. So if you take into effect that our manufacturing processes are much more advanced, we're producing a lot of instruments, the way we log and cut trees has become much more advanced. And you put that together with hundreds of years of using this species, we've basically been going from region to region, going from species to species and wiping them out or reducing those populations to bare minimums as we look for more and more dense black wood.
To call Ebony.
Right.
So part of all of these new regulations is tracing back where a specific piece comes from and determining that we aren't, hopefully, wiping out area after area after area as we move through species. So there are a lot of different ways to certify this.
Right.
What are some of the most common certifications, and what is this status of this sustainable ebony that we hear about?
I think it's not so much confusing so much as something new, and we're trying to come to grips with how we're going to do it. Realize we are a very small part of the overall forest industry. So what the wood industry is trying to do is geolocate sustainable sources of wood and then trace or document that wood's travel through the chain of custody or chain of supply. Till it gets to the point where we have an end product with the wood in it, and we can identify where the wood came from, that it was from a sustainable source, and then we can sell it. The biggest, probably most well-known certification process is through the Forest Stewardship Council, the FSC. There are others, the SFI and the PEFC. For ebony, as far as I could tell, my research so far, I haven't found a lot of sustainable sources. I know Taylor Guitars made a special effort to go into Cameroon and set up their own sustainable source for that wood. I know other guitar wood suppliers have gone and done similar things in South America for other woods. Right now, the violin industry, we haven't done any of that, to the best of my knowledge.
So we talked a little bit about some of these sustainable ways of doing ebony. I mean, in the history of violin making, as you were talking about earlier, wasn't just ebony being used. I mean, Baroque makers especially have traditionally not used ebony. Tailpieces today are made of any number of different types of wood. Are makers out there experimenting with other hardwoods? We hear about other tropical hardwoods that are great for this. You even mentioned a couple earlier. Is that a reasonable solution to the problem? Yeah,
in Latin America, there are a lot of woods that are, not a lot, there are woods, tropical hardwoods, that are harder, actually, than ebony. However, you have two issues. One, they're not necessarily black, and we're back to the same potential sustainability issues. You would want to be doing sustainable sourcing, and the rate of consumption that we're currently using these woods up at is more than or faster than the ability for those species to regenerate.
So if there isn't a fully natural wood that is a effective replacement for ebony, what other fully sustainable products are available that are man-made, and are there any that maybe aren't as green as we would like to say, but
are also viable
options? What's out there?
So the three top contenders right now are sauna wood, which is strictly compressed wood. No artificial resins or other things are used in that. And then you have composites. You have sustainably certified composites that are compressed paper and bioresin. And then you have your phenol formaldehyde options, which are not quite as green. And they wouldn't be sustainably certified because they're not really a wood industry product.
So that seems like at least a potential solution.
The advantages to the man-made products is that, one, they're consistent. They are usually harder, actually, than ebony and some of these other woods. They're just going to hold up longer term. They have similar or better stiffness factors and bending strength than ebony, or at least the diversity of ebony that we're seeing out on the marketplace right now. How we use them varies. So we might have to look at our techniques for using these products, change from how we use a natural wood like ebony.
Yeah.
But there's no reason we can't do that. It's just a mindset and a priority.
So to kind of wrap up, just talk about your perspective a little bit. Since embarking on your journey with Vermont Violins and then now almost 20 years later, V. Richelieu Instruments, how has your perspective on this issue morphed, and how have you now become one of the key players in the push for sustainable instrument making?
Yeah. So looking at the climate change issues that we have right now and the impact that those climate change, temperature changes, wind, water, drought, all kinds of changes are going to be hitting these forests. In order to preserve those ecosystems and to preserve our futures, we need to change.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have a choice right now. And, color is not a priority given those other shifts that are going to happen. I think, if we're going to continue to be doing manufacturing and producing large volumes of these instruments, we really need to incorporate man-made technology, alternatives, and preferably sustainable alternatives so that we're not trading one environmental disaster for another. I think that's really important. And I also think it's really important that, music continues to be something beautiful that we're contributing to the world and not another source of environmental problems.
Well, thank you for sitting down with me, talking about the issue that I know we're all super passionate about here.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for tuning in. I hope in the future that we can go a little bit more into depth into some of these things like the FSC certifications, what it takes to get there, and also some of these other products. But until then, thank you for tuning in.